Welcome, curious minds, to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging into a paradox that has really fascinated boardrooms and tech innovators for a while now.
It's a good one.
Yeah, what if the secret, the profound secret behind LinkedIn's, well, staggering $7.9 billion empire wasn't the relentless grind, wasn't the endless hustle?
Which is what you'd expect, right?
Exactly, but rather just a consistent 30 minutes of silence every single morning.
It sounds almost like a riddle, doesn't it? Especially when you think about, the culture of Silicon Valley, an industry that's historically just glorified speed, constant connectivity, that always-on mentality.
Totally.
We're talking about Jeff Weiner, the man who led LinkedIn, helped it become one of the world's biggest, most influential professional networks. And he did it all while keeping up this deeply ingrained daily meditation practice.
So the immediate question is, was this just a coincidence, like a happy accident?
Or was there something fundamentally strategic, maybe even revolutionary, about this approach, especially in a world that's just obsessed with doing more, faster, louder? It's deeply counterintuitive. That's precisely the intriguing core of our deep dive today. I mean, when you picture a typical Silicon Valley CEO, you probably think of someone talking lightning speed, juggling calls, thriving in chaos, right?
That's the stereotype for sure.
Yeah.
Hyper-driven.
But Jeff Weiner, he was, well, kind of the antithesis of that. He's known for this calm, deliberate way about him, almost, some people have described him as monk-like.
Monk-like,
No.
yeah. Which is just not the usual image.
Not at all. Yet, this was the individual who took LinkedIn from, about $78 million in revenue when he started?
Pretty modest, relatively speaking.
To an eye-watering $7.9 billion. And at the same time, scaling from this scrappy little team of around 338 employees
Right.
to a global powerhouse, 690 million users, 16,000 employees. It's just an astounding trajectory, however you look at it.
And this story, it's really more than just another business success story, though obviously it is that, of course.
But it's a really compelling look into a leadership philosophy, one built on things like stillness, clarity, genuine compassion, which is, a stark departure from the usual corporate playbook.
Definitely.
So for you listening, our mission today is to really unpack this fascinating mystery. We want to understand not just if meditation can play a role in building a multi-billion-dollar company.
But how? How does it actually work?
Exactly. How might it fundamentally reshape the way we think about success, about leadership, especially in today's noisy world? We promise to cut through the assumptions, give you some surprising facts, maybe offer those aha moments that might just challenge how you see things. #tag1, the daily ritual that defied Silicon Valley logic.
Okay, let's unpack this then. I mean, the sheer audacity of Jeff Weiner's choice, his foundational decision, especially in that environment, it's got to picture it. December 2008.
Okay.
Jeff steps in as CEO of LinkedIn. And this wasn't just any time. This was arguably like the epicenter of Silicon Valley's most intense high-pressure era.
Absolutely. Think post.com boom, pre-mobile explosion. Things were intense.
We're talking about an ecosystem just fueled by aggressive hypergrowth targets, this almost religious belief in sleepless hustle.
Hustle culture was everything.
And just this relentless cascade of back-to-back meetings. It left zero mental space to think, let alone just breathe. It was a pressure cooker. The wisdom was outwork everyone, outpace everyone, outcompete, often, at the expense of your own well-being.
In that context, that pressure cooker environment is exactly what makes Weiner's choice so, profoundly revolutionary. While so many of his peers, his competitors, were literally burning themselves out.
Glorifying it even.
Glorifying the grind, the round-the-clock, always on stage. It was a fierce race for market share. And Jeff chose a fundamentally different path. He wasn't just swimming against the current. He was practically, sitting still in the middle of a raging river.
It's a great image.
You saw other tech leaders back then becoming known for their extreme hours, aggressive tactics, sometimes even these public displays of bravado. Weiner, completely different. He opted for something deeply internal, prioritizing inner calm over all that external chaos. And that was just radical, a radical departure from the norm.
So what was this practice, this deceptively simple practice that became the cornerstone?
Every single morning, 30 minutes, silent meditation, non-negotiable.
And think about what that actually means in practice. No calendar reminders pinging, no Slack messages demanding your attention right now.
No CNBC humming in the background, feeding anxiety.
None of that. Just pure, unadulterated silence.
Yep.
Focusing on the breath, cultivating presence. And this wasn't like some trend he picked up.
Not at all. He'd actually found this years earlier through John Kabat-Zinn, the pioneer of mindfulness-based stress reduction.
Right, MBSR.
Exactly. So by the time he took the reins at LinkedIn, this wasn't optional. It was absolutely unequivocally baked into his routine, non-negotiable.
It sounds like it became his personal operating system.
That's a perfect way to put it. And it's really critical to understand he wasn't using meditation as like an escape from the stress.
Right, not hiding from it.
Quite the opposite, actually. He was actively conditioning his mind. Like an athlete trains a muscle, conditioning it to handle that immense pressure, but with greater clarity, with more equanimity.
While everyone else was optimizing for output.
Chasing the next productivity hack, yeah. Jeff chose introspection. It was a powerful statement about where he believed the real leverage was. Not in more frantic activity, but in finding greater internal stillness perspective. That discipline helped him resist those knee-jerk reactions, which are so common in high-pressure jobs.
And here's where it gets really interesting, I think. How this deeply personal practice started to bleed into the company culture. It wasn't just his thing.
Right. He didn't just keep it private. He intentionally brought it right into LinkedIn's sort of corporate DNA.
How did that work?
Well, many team meetings, especially at the executive level, apparently began with 2 full minutes of silence.
2 minutes in a tech meeting.
Imagine 2 minutes. Nobody spoke. Phones away, screens dark, no documents being passed around. It was just a collective pause. A deliberate collective breath, a conscious shift from that default mode of just reacting.
To being intentional, grounded.
Exactly. Intentionality and grounded presence.
Wow. I mean, to outsiders, that must have looked odd,
Yes.
inefficient.
Totally odd. And you can bet some executive, especially those used to the traditional, results at any cost way of doing business,
Yeah.
probably felt it was incredibly counterproductive. Like, time is money. What are we doing?
Yeah, let's get on with it.
But Jeff saw it differently. His rationale was simple but really profound. He said, meditation gives me the space between stimulus and response. It lets me respond with compassion, not react out of fear or anger.
That's a huge distinction.
It really is. Because think about it. So much corporate dysfunction, it comes from leaders making snap decisions, right? Fueled by ego or anxiety or just immediate market pressure. Leads to misaligned strategies, internal conflicts.
Constant firefighting.
Exactly. This collective pause, it actively created strategic clarity right there in the chaos. It allowed for more thoughtful, more aligned responses.
So he wasn't aiming for like a spiritual vibe in the office.
No, not at all. He was striving for palpable presence, clearer thinking. And in doing that, he ended up cultivating one of the most focused, empathetic, and frankly human-centered executive teams Silicon Valley had probably ever seen.
Okay, but here's the absolute kicker, the part that really makes you sit up.
Mm-hmm.
While Jeff Weiner is consistently sitting in silence, LinkedIn isn't just growing.
Oh no, it's absolutely skyrocketing the numbers. They're almost unbelievable when you lay them out.
What's him?
Okay, so from 2009 to 2019, under his leadership, annual revenue explodes from $78 million to $7.9 billion.
I think you're leading with a B, user base.
Expands from a respectable 33 million to a colossal 690 million active professionals worldwide.
Good grief.
And the team scales exponentially from that lean 338 employees to over 16,000 around the globe.
That kind of exponential growth.
Okay.
It's usually pure chaos, right? Overwhelming pressure, messy, reactive decisions.
Typically, yes. But here, it was all guided by a leader who deliberately spent every morning doing essentially nothing, on purpose, creating this pocket of profound calm right in the middle of the storm.
Just let that sink in for a second. The fastest growing professional network in history, run by a man who deliberately sat in silence every morning, while the rest of the industry is sprinting, fueled by, espresso and adrenaline.
Sacrificing sleep, well-being.
Right. And what's even more remarkable, I think, is that Jeff never positioned meditation as some kind of productivity hack. Do this and 100x your output.
No, never. His message was much more radical, more human, really. He said things like, meditation makes me a better listener, a better thinker, a more compassionate leader. That's what scales.
It's about the quality of the leadership, the quality of decisions, the human connection, not just brute force activity.
This really is the core of it, I think. In a world where CEOs are constantly told, be louder, be sharper, be tougher, Project Invincibility.
Jeff chose quieter, kinder, more intentional.
And ironically,
That's exactly what made LinkedIn unstoppable. It
Yeah,
completely reframes the whole conversation around leadership effectiveness, doesn't it?
it really does. So the question isn't just, can meditation build a $7.9 billion company?
Although that's a good question.
It is. But the deeper, maybe more profound question is, in this age of constant noise, constant distraction, can silence actually become your biggest advantage, your most potent, most sustainable competitive edge?
It challenges the very definition of strength and effectiveness in leadership today. Hashtag Tech 2. $7.9 billion growth LinkedIn's rise under a silent leader.
That's a huge question, and one we should definitely keep revisiting, because let's be absolutely clear here. Jeff Weiner didn't just meditate his way to success.
No, absolutely not. That quiet inner work, it was foundational, definitely. But it enabled a series of incredibly strategic, bold, often quite counterintuitive business decisions. Decisions that transformed the company.
Utterly transformed it. These were choices, quietly made, mindfully executed, but they took LinkedIn from being this relatively small player into a genuine global economic force.
Remind us of the starting point again, late 2008.
Yeah, late 2008, LinkedIn's still finding its feet, respectable, sure, 33 million members, about $78 million revenue, that small team of 338. Scrappy.
Okay.
Fast forward a decade, the numbers are just jaw-dropping. 690 million users, 200 plus countries, over 16,000 employees globally, and that's $7.9 billion in annual revenue by 2019.
And then the Microsoft acquisition.
Which really capped it off. 2016, $26.2 billion, one of the biggest tech acquisitions in history at that point. The evolution from, what some skeptics called a glorified online resume network
Yeah, people saying that.
to becoming the world's dominant professional graph. It's staggering. And it was absolutely not an accident.
And this is the strategic layer people often miss, isn't it? They assume, oh, he just rode the social media wave.
Right, like everyone else did during that explosion. But LinkedIn's success, its enduring success, it was never really about chasing fleeting trends or viral fads.
It was about infrastructure.
Exactly. Meticulously building long-term infrastructure and a profound utility for its users. Jeff understood this better than almost anyone. While other platforms were obsessed with, daily active users or grappling with their monetization models,
Try to figure out how to make money.
Jeff kept asking this one singular, really differentiating question: how do we make every member of the global workforce more productive and successful? It was about systemic impact, not just momentary engagement.
This is where his vision really stands out, I think. That paradigm shift.
Totally. He wasn't chasing engagement just for engagement's sake. He was building an economic operating system. That's a crucial distinction. And maybe meditation helped him articulate that, maintain that focus.
How did that translate into products?
Well, under him, LinkedIn systematically rolled out features that maybe to a casual user seemed kind of mundane, maybe even boring on the surface.
Yeah, like skills, endorsements.
Skills, endorsements, LinkedIn Learning, Recruiter, Sales Navigator. But every single one of those products was an intentional piece of a much bigger puzzle. Part of this deeper, almost audacious vision, Jeff, called the economic graph.
Right, the economic graph, what was the goal there?
The goal: to digitally map everything, every job, every skill, every company, every professional in the world, and then use that immense dynamic data.
Powered by AI, machine learning.
Exactly. Use it to systematically close the gaps in global opportunity. It wasn't just about collecting data. It was about building this living, breathing map, an ontology of the world's workforce.
So, okay, what does this actually mean for the future of work? And for how we think about strategic leadership?
It means that while most platforms were busy selling user attention to advertisers, Jeff was building a platform that fundamentally sold opportunity.
Connecting skills to jobs.
Precisely. Making tangible connections between people's skills and the jobs that needed them. Between education and actual employment paths. Between, untapped human potential and tangible reality. This wasn't about quick clicks or going viral. It was about generating genuine long-term impact on careers, on lives. That clarity of purpose, honed in the quiet moments, was his North Star.
That's a huge vision.
It's a visionary shift. It connects directly to the broader economy by showing the power of data, not just for ads, but for societal benefit, individual benefit. Imagine a world where talent gaps are systematically closed, where you can see the skills you need for the future and actually get them, because we have this comprehensive real-time map of economic needs and capabilities.
That's the promise of the economic graph.
That's the promise, and it's a direct reflection of Wiener's long-term, compassionate, deeply analytical approach. An approach, arguably facilitated by his mindfulness practice.
And his specific strategic moves really showed this long-term thinking. often going against the market's short-term demands, like the IPO in 2011.
Right. That was a really volatile time for tech IPOs. Lots of companies delaying or rushing out with shaky fundamentals.
Well, LinkedIn.
They debuted with incredibly strong fundamentals, remarkable transparency. That meditation-honed equanimity, maybe, let him ignore the market noise and focus on the core value. It led to this really well-received IPO, quite different from some others driven by hype.
And then the lynda.com acquisition, $1.5 billion in 2015. That seemed bold.
It was bold. And surprising to many. Traditional thinking might have said, acquire a competitor or buy a flashy social feature.
Right.
But Jeff, with that clarity, saw lynda.com as the critical piece to transform LinkedIn from just a job site into a comprehensive learning and development platform.
Directly feeding the economic graph vision.
Exactly. If the graph identifies skill gaps, LinkedIn Learning provides the way to fill them, empowering users directly. He also famously resisted those growth hacking tactics, prioritizing trust over short-term metrics.
No clickbait protecting user privacy.
Which many competitors absolutely did, often hurting their brand long-term. LinkedIn played the long game, building loyalty and respect.
And then the huge one, the Microsoft acquisition, $26.2 billion. Most CEOs would just cash out then, right?
Take the massive payout right off into the sunset, totally.
But Jeff stayed on as CEO.
He stayed. And that decision was pivotal. It wasn't about ego or clinging to control. It felt like a deliberate act of stewardship. He knew how important it was to ensure cultural continuity, product integrity during such a massive transition.
Satya Nadella's quote comes to mind.
Yeah, Microsoft CEO, he said it perfectly in 2017. What made Jeff Weiner different is that he scaled LinkedIn without losing its soul.
That's incredible praise, especially from Nadella. It speaks directly to the impact of Weiner's value-driven leadership.
It really does speak volumes about the unique value Jeff brought way beyond just financial results. He wasn't just a steward of growth. He was a steward of the core values, the long-term vision.
And when things went wrong, because they always do.
They always do. And he didn't hide. Take early 2016. LinkedIn stock tanks plummets over 40% after a weak earnings report.
Ouch. That kind of hit usually sends CEOs scrambling for cover, damage control.
Or they just disappear for a bit. But Jeff did the opposite. In this powerful yet incredibly quiet gesture, he declined his stock bonus for the year.
Which is worse.
Over $14 million. And instead, he quietly redirected the whole amount to his employees.
No big announcement, no PR.
No PR stunt, no press release, just action. And his reasoning was simple but profound. Leadership is not about rewards, it's about responsibility.
Wow. What's fascinating there is just how that act reinforces his core values so powerfully.
Exactly. It wasn't just about the money. It was a deep psychological move. It earned him immense loyalty, immense trust. It underlined his philosophy. Compassion doesn't mean being soft. It means being strong enough to care, even when it's hard.
Demonstrating strength through caring, not just toughness.
Right. In that moment of intense pressure when you might be tempted to protect yourself, he prioritized his team. It showed compassion as a strength, and you can imagine the impact on morale, on that trust he'd built.
So yeah, every business school case study talks about product market fit, competitive advantage, operational excellence.
And LinkedIn under Jeff had all that for sure.
Absolutely. But what made it really distinct, it seems, was something else. Something most companies just lack. Emotional coherence. Profound intentionality.
That's a good way to put it. His clarity, that sharp vision cutting through the noise, it didn't come from caffeine-fueled chaos or endless meetings.
It came from stillness.
It came directly from stillness, from those 30 minutes of silence every morning before the daily storm hit.
And somehow, in that quiet, that grounded space, he consistently saw things others missed.
It seems so. Things others caught in the daily grind just couldn't see. He saw the evolution of the future of work. He grasped the power of data plus empathy. He recognized the need for ethical algorithms way before it became a mainstream concern.
The importance of tech ethics.
And maybe most importantly, he saw the value of building a business that genuinely helps people help themselves. That virtuous cycle of growth and opportunity.
So when you look at that $7.9 billion revenue number,
don't just see the numbers, see the intention behind them. See the culture. See a company that scaled because its leader first scaled his own mind, refined his own mind.
It's a really compelling argument against the idea that aggressive, nonstop action is the only way to massive success.
It certainly challenges that notion head on. #Tag3. Meditation wasn't just self-care. It was Jeff Weiner's leadership operating system.
Absolutely. I mean, to most people in tech, maybe in any high-pressure job, meditation sounds like a wellness luxury.
Something you do after you burn out, or if you find the time.
Right. But for Jeff Weiner, it wasn't optional. It wasn't a retreat from his responsibilities. It was the foundation, the core operating system for his leadership. He wasn't meditating just to feel better in that self-care sense.
He meditated to lead better, to bring a higher quality of presence, of decision-making to everything he did.
And the neuroscience actually backs this up, doesn't it?
It really does. It's fascinating. Long-term meditation consistently shows it builds up the prefrontal cortex. That's your brain's CEO, basically. Decision-making, problem-solving, empathy, emotional regulation.
Important stuff for a leader.
Crucial stuff. And at the same time, it can actually shrink the amygdala, the part that drives our primal fight-or-flight reaction to stress.
So basically, it trains your mind to slow down, stay calm under pressure, choose wisely instead of just reacting.
In simple terms, yes, exactly. The mental agility and composure Jeff needed as LinkedIn was just exploding around him, navigating hypergrowth, intense competition.
While his peers were defaulting to hustle and hyperdrive.
Often fueled by anxiety, constant urgency, Jeff focused intensely on cultivating presence. He seemed to have this deep belief that the best decisions don't come from reacting faster.
But from seeing clearer.
Yeah.
More holistically, more grounded.
And for him, that clarity was born directly from silence. And he brought that clear, calm, grounded presence into every interaction. High-stakes meetings, one-on-ones, crisis situations.
How did that manifest? People said he paused a lot.
Yeah, famously paused before speaking, asked way more questions than he gave orders, and when tensions rose, which they always do, he didn't overpower them, he diffused them. Mostly by just genuinely listening, creating space for everyone.
He called it compassionate management. What did that mean to him? It wasn't about being soft, right?
No, and that's crucial. He emphasized compassion didn't mean softness or lacking rigor. It meant strength with awareness, strength with empathy.
Holding high standards, but caring.
Exactly. Holding people accountable for ambitious results while still caring deeply about them as individuals, about their well-being. It meant making tough, sometimes unpopular decisions. And then looking your team in the eye while doing it, explaining why, with transparency and integrity.
That approach is incredibly rare. And powerful, I imagine.
Profoundly powerful, especially for building trust. Because while other leaders were chasing the short-term wins, the quarterly bumps, the immediate metrics, Jeff was obsessively focused on building something much more enduring. Long-term trust.
And that trust became LinkedIn's cultural backbone.
Absolutely. It outlasted earnings cycles, market fluctuations, even that massive Microsoft acquisition. You saw it so clearly in how he handled that 2016 stock crash.
Right, to bonus again.
He didn't panic, didn't blame anyone, just quietly rejected his $14 million bonus, gave it to his employees. Quietly, no fanfare.
It really does raise that question about what is strength in leadership?
It absolutely does. His actions directly challenge those traditional corporate ideas of power, dominance, aggression, focus on personal gain.
He showed strength through responsibility, prioritizing the team.
Even at personal cost.
Yep.
Yeah. It showed true strength comes from responsibility, from caring for the collective. That core principle leadership is about responsibility, not reward was sharpened every morning. In silence.
Not on a spreadsheet, not in a war room.
But on a cushion. Closed eyes, open mind. It's a powerful counter-narrative.
So no, meditation wasn't just a nice-to-have for him.
Not even close. It was his edge, his anchor, his way of keeping humanity, keeping core values right at the center of leadership, even as the company scaled towards $8 billion, 700 million users.
In a world obsessed with speed, he built LinkedIn through stillness, intentionality.
And somehow, that stillness, that grounded presence, really did move the world forward in surprising ways. It suggests slowing down can actually lead to greater, more sustainable momentum. #tag4. The philosophy behind the business long-term vision in a short-term world.
Absolutely. And one of the most striking things about his leadership, I think, was that he never just saw LinkedIn as a business, just about quarterly earnings.
No, he saw it as much more, an ecosystem, a living, breathing network.
With the potential to reshape how opportunity flows globally.
That perspective, almost philosophical, seemed foundational to everything. Product, culture, strategy.
And the economic graph was the ultimate expression of that, wasn't it?
Totally. His most radical, defining vision. The goal was audacious. Digitally map the entire global economy. Every job, company, skill, school, professional.
And then connect them all.
Connect them all into one dynamic, searchable system. But the purpose wasn't just to show opportunity. It was to democratize it, to actively close those gaps between talent and access, education and employment, potential and reality. It was a massive, long-term undertaking.
Way beyond just a tech platform's usual scope.
Yeah.
And definitely not a quarterly goal.
No way. This was like a 20-year vision, a North Star. Jeff consistently returned to it, anchored his decisions in it, even when the market was screaming for faster growth, flashier features, more aggressive monetization right now.
She resisted the shortcut.
Steadfastly. He refused to let LinkedIn become just another clickbait-driven social network, which must have been a huge temptation back then.
Huge pressure, yeah.
Instead, he doubled down on trust, on real identity, on professionalism. That strategic restraint, dreamed by his long-term view, became a core strength.
So while others chased attention,
LinkedIn consciously worked to earn intention. People didn't just scroll LinkedIn mindlessly. They came with purpose. To learn, grow, connect, build careers, find talent.
and that sense of purpose came from the top.
Directly from the top. Jeff's personal philosophy, that compassion, that long-term vision shaped everything. How features were built, how culture was scaled globally. He genuinely seemed to believe businesses exist not just for profit, but to elevate people, contribute meaningfully.
Didn't he say something like, our job isn't just to connect professionals, it's to help them transform?
Exactly. And that wasn't just talk. It showed up in big decisions, small decisions, like the lynda.com acquisition, that huge $1.5 billion deal. It instantly turned LinkedIn into a learning ecosystem, perfectly fitting the economic graph mission.
And building that BizOps team.
Right, the business operations team.
Right.
A world-class internal analytics and strategy group, not just reporting numbers, but asking better questions, providing insights on why things were happening and what should come next, directly shaping strategy.
And how he mentored leaders.
Yeah, encouraging not just results, but reflection, ethical consideration, because Jeff understood what so many leaders miss. Speed means nothing without direction, and direction means nothing without values.
His values being
Compassion, integrity, long-term thinking, clear and consistent. These weren't just posters on a wall. They were working principles that built a company designed to last, designed to make a difference.
So when he stepped down as CEO in 2020,
Right.
after over a decade, he didn't just walk away.
No, he transitioned to executive chairman. And that move wasn't about holding on to control. It felt like stewardship of the vision, protecting the culture, making sure that as LinkedIn scaled even further, it never lost its soul, its purpose.
That move alone tells you a lot about his philosophy.
It really does. He didn't lead for headlines, didn't optimize for virality. He built with patience, with presence, with purpose. And he proved something revolutionary, really.
That a business doesn't need to sacrifice its humanity to scale.
Exactly. In fact, he showed it probably can't afford to sacrifice its humanity if it wants true, enduring success and impact. Hashtag Tag55. Power through presence. How Jeff Weiner influenced without dominating.
It's interesting to think about power in Silicon Valley. It's often loud, right? Biggest voice, fastest pitch, boldest claim.
Dominance is often the model.
But Jeff Weiner's influence, his power, it sounds completely different. It didn't come from raising his voice, dominating the room.
No, it came from raising his presence.
What did that look like?
People noticed it. Not because he commanded attention overtly, but almost because he didn't need to. He listened deeply, intently, more than he spoke.
Created space for others.
Tangible space, made people feel safe to share ideas, challenge things, speak truth without fear. That's a really rare kind of power. Quiet, yes, but magnetic. Effective.
It wasn't passive, it was intentional.
Deeply intentional. Forged through years of mindfulness practice, emotional regulation, what he called deep listening. He didn't interrupt. He observed. He didn't impose authority. He invited collaboration, shared ownership.
And that presence shaped the leadership culture, inside out.
Exactly. Not top-down mandates. It created leaders who led like him. Clarity, compassion, calm under pressure, a ripple effect through the whole organization.
And his influence went beyond LinkedIn, too.
Oh, yeah. He became this trusted thought partner and advisor to other big tech leaders. Reid Hoffman, obviously, LinkedIn's founder, Satya Nadella at Microsoft, many others. His philosophy of compassionate leadership. It started personal, but through his impact at LinkedIn, it became this kind of movement, resonated across the industry.
He wasn't just building a company. He was subtly shifting how people thought about leadership itself.
Right. And he didn't write the usual management bestsellers or launch a podcast with quick fixes.
No productivity hacks.
No. But when he spoke at Davos, Stanford, closed-door sessions, leaders listened. Why? Because he wasn't pushing superficial tips. He was offering a blueprint for sustainable power.
Power that doesn't burn people out isn't based on ego.
Exactly. Power rooted in awareness, discipline, empathy. Power that invites rather than dominates.
And crucially, this wasn't just theory. This was a guy who led through an IPO, massive expansion, a $26 billion acquisition.
Without ever compromising those core values that made him different. Take 2019, for example. LinkedIn launches this major initiative to reduce algorithmic bias in its hiring tools.
Proactive ethics.
Totally proactive, not waiting for a scandal. Pushed forward by Jeff's belief that influence comes with responsibility, that data needs a conscience, that tech needs humanity.
That's real influence, isn't it? Not just numbers, but norms. Not just profits, but principles.
Absolutely. He never tried to dominate conversations. He changed them by demonstrating a different way. He didn't chase power in the usual sense. He redefined what power could look like.
And left a lesson that feels, well, more urgent than ever today.
Definitely. In this noisy, distracted world, real power isn't loud. It's clear, it's grounded, and it's generous. #tag lessons and takeaways.
So what really makes a great leader, especially now in the 21st century, is it just speed, aggressive strategy, pure charisma?
Maybe it's some mix of those. But Jeff Weiner showed us something else, something profoundly different that really challenges those assumptions.
He showed that maybe the most powerful force in business, the engine of sustainable, human-centered growth, might actually be found in stillness, in silence.
He proved meditation isn't some fluffy escape. It's building the mental and emotional muscle to lead through chaos, with composure, with vision.
And that compassion isn't weakness, it's clarity. The kind that builds trust, makes decisions that last way beyond the next earnings report.
And that long-term vision isn't naive idealism. It's absolutely necessary if you want to build a lasting culture, not just a fleeting company. A culture that inspires loyalty, dedication, real impact.
And maybe the biggest takeaway for me is this. You don't have to be the loudest to be powerful.
You don't have to be aggressive to be respected, to inspire commitment.
And you definitely don't have to grind 24/7, sacrifice yourself to grow a multi-billion-dollar company.
Sometimes, maybe more often than we think, sitting still, disconnecting from the noise intentionally, that's the most radical move a leader can make.
Because in that stillness, that quiet space, leaders find what so many lose on the way up.
Presence. Purpose.
And maybe most importantly, people who actually believe, really believe, in where you're going.
Jeff Weiner didn't just lead LinkedIn, he led differently. And he left behind more than just a legacy of growth. He left a model, a compelling model for what leadership could look like now.
Not reactive, not rushed.
Grounded, human, real. #tag outro.
So if this deep dive into Jeff Weiner's, well, unconventional path has resonated with you, if that idea that silence isn't weakness, that slowing down isn't falling behind,
That success and stillness can actually be partners.
yeah, if that stayed with you, then maybe just take a moment for reflection.
We invite you to consider, what if you gave yourself just 5 minutes tomorrow morning? Just 5 minutes to do absolutely nothing but breathe.
No notifications pinging, no external noise, no chasing tasks, just presence.
Not because Jeff Weiner did it, but maybe because it's that quiet edge, that clarity you didn't even know you needed. In your own life, your own leadership, whatever that looks like for you.
So maybe just take that moment, pause, reflect, and honestly ask yourself, what kind of leader do I actually want to become?